Hi, I'm Susan Tierney, and this is Scott Horne, and we are with the Owner Finance Network, and today we are going to talk about how to speak to a seller about owner financing. And kind of we're going to start from the beginning, and one of the first things that we do obviously is build rapport, right? We kind of find things in common and...
Well, you do. Well, you know, when you first understand that when we go out and meet a seller for the first time, we're probably not the first person they've called.
Right.
Most sellers typically call real estate agents first when they're needing to sell a property, and they are realizing they've got an issue, right?
Right.
And so we're not that first tier of approach. The customary realtor marketplace is going to be. And so when we meet there, we know that's already a problem ongoing.
Right.
And if we have handled our conversation on the phone with them properly, where we've asked some questions, you know, what's going on, what's the situation, usually they will open up and they tell us.
Right.
By the way, not always.
Right.
We've had some who don't do that, but most of the time they do. And so knowing that, I find that, you know, being compassionate, realizing that we're there to help that seller solve a problem in a situation, and then using our knowledge of the industry and being able to help them, and if we like to do a back-end owner finance sale too, learn how to make money in the middle doing all this and being successful. But I think it's so important to build that rapport.
Exactly.
I like finding things in common, as you said, and just sitting down and trying to understand the situation, and then from a perspective, trying to figure out how can we best help them solve the problem.
Right. And we want to lay out what their options are too. They may know them, but it's good to go back and go, okay, they can sell retail, they can lease the property, they can do a short sale, we can purchase it subject to. So let's start with the retail option.
Well, so Susan, normally when I'm talking to that seller, the great odds are they've already been through all this with a realtor somewhere along the line, or they may already know it in some format. So what I try to do is just regurgitate what they probably already know in a very clear and concise fashion. Could they sell the property retail? Well, if they could, they already would have done that probably, and hopefully made more money or gotten out of the deal in some format. But so often they're behind in payments, they have a very short time frame. Oftentimes the house needs repairs so it can pass appraisal to go retail, because of course home buyers who are buying retail, they want to walk into a house move in ready.
Right.
They don't want to come in and do repairs, etc. That's what the investors do typically out there. And so,
and then they have all those fees to pay.
Yeah, they've got to be able to pay their realtor fees. They're going to have to find a buyer who can qualify for the property. And I know in some marketplaces you can move that very quickly, others not so quick. But in a standard market, you know, it takes a little bit of time normally to do those kind of things. So they already understand that retail is not an option. Otherwise, they wouldn't be calling us.
And mostly of the condition of their home, they can't really, they'd have to put a lot of money in to fix it up. What about leasing? What's another option for them? How do you walk them through that?
Well, you know, the problem is if they're behind in payments, that's not going to be an option for them, because they're probably in a pre-foreclosure mode already, or one is coming up soon. Do they really want to be a landlord and deal with tenants and toilets and trash and all things that go along with that? Do they have the expertise to do that themselves? And I'll tell you that so often they don't, which means they have to go to a third-party management company. And we go back to what we said earlier, the condition of the home. A tenant expects that property to be in good condition to move in. Otherwise, it's not going to lease. So they understand that's not an option either.
Okay. With so many of these sellers being underwater with arrears and repairs to the home, a short sale is an option for them. How would you walk the seller through those requirements?
Again, so that's right. So it's nice to have an understanding of the short sale process a little bit. It used to be much more prevalent years ago, but it's still available out there right now. And it's understanding how short sales work. So first off, you have to make an application. The seller has to deliver their financial information to the mortgage company, so they have to have the ability to compile all that somehow. And then what usually happens is you hurry up and you wait. Well, often they're already behind in payments. So of course, as they're waiting, what are they doing? Not paying payments again. So they're getting further behind. And then what happens so often I see is that the lender comes back and says no. And everybody is the eternal optimist, thinking it's always going to work great.
Right.
But oftentimes the answer is no.
Yeah.
Now they're even further behind and dug their hole deeper.
Yeah.
So well, let's assume for a minute that a short sale is successful. So what happens? Well, in that situation, think about this. A, you lose your home because you sell it.
Right.
You're selling it for...
And that goes on your credit. As a short sale is kind of just a step below a foreclosure to
It
your
is. There are
credit,
some
right?
serious credit issues with a short sale, and that short sale is going to stay on your record for, I don't know the exact same time that the credit companies do, at least 3 years. It could be 7 years, though, that it stays on the seller's credit report. That's not a good thing.
Right.
Of course, they no longer own the home. I've seen some mortgage companies that give the seller a few $1,000s for a move out. Is that still happening today? I don't know. But along the way, you know, their credit is damaged, and they could potentially face what's called a 1099-C from the lender, which is a forgiveness of debt, meaning if you had a $200,000 loan and you sold the house for $160,000 was the accepted payoff, they could give you a 1099-C for $40,000 possibly, and you're going to pay taxes on $40,000, which they don't have. So that becomes a problem. And you know, there's a possibility of what is called a deficiency lawsuit. Probably not, because it's an agreed short sale, but that 1099-C can be very viable too. So that's not a very great scenario for the seller either.
Right.
So you know, you go through these various options with them, and I guess their other option is do nothing, right?
Right.
And they could do nothing, and they're going to be risking facing foreclosure in most instances, and that's just terrible for them.
Right. And that's kind of where we come in, talk to them about either purchasing the home subject to or with cash, so that we can you know, help them out of that situation and bringing the loan current. So let's talk about that and what the risks and benefits are of the owner finance strategy.
Sure. I mean, I'm just going to go back a moment. You know, and so often, kind of under the retail scenario, going to an investor who's going to pay cash is so often going to be a number that's underneath what they owe already. It's not even an option for consideration in most cases. So as we're posturing the owner finance conversation, it's understanding we've talked to them about retail, why it's not an option. Why leasing probably is not an option. Why short sale may not be a good option either. It could be a consideration. And why going to the investor marketplace for all cash is not. And so all we're doing is reiterating what they probably already know, and then showing them how we can help them.
Not always. I mean, I find most people don't know.
Well, I find that a lot have understand that to a degree. Somewhere in the back of their mind, they understand they have a problem.
Well,
So we're here to solve that problem, and the solution is seller financing. And that is what creates such positive benefits for them. But there's also some risks. So I'm going to walk them through the positive side first, which is, guys, you get a chance to sell your house and sell it quickly. Now, they might be selling that house to another homeowner. That'd be great. But oftentimes it's to us, the investor, and we're going to come in and buy it. So when we buy this home, what's going to happen? Well, if they're behind in payments, that loan's going to get reinstated, and all their arrears are going to be paid. They get a credit bump. That's great. Next, if the house needs repairs in some format, those are going to be paid. The seller's paying none of this. Remember, this is, although we have bought the house with seller financing, we give them back a deed of trust and security. So now we are improving their financial position on their mortgage and improving their home that they couldn't do themselves previously, creating real value in this property. So I walk them through those kind of items, you know, first, and how those things work. Then, of course, we're going to be making the payment for them going along, which is going to be a benefit, because it's going to help increase their credit score as we're making our payments in a timely fashion. So all of those things are positives to them. I then go back and I take a minute and talk about the risks. So what are the risks? There's two primary risks that I want to make sure we disclose. One, that until their existing debt is paid off, they're still liable on it. I never tell that seller we're going to pay it off next week, next month, next year. it will be paid off when it's paid off. And that might mean all the way through the end of its term, which could be 30 years, 15 years, whatever might be left on that mortgage. So I want to make sure that they clearly understand that part. The second part is the due on sale clause. Now, most sellers have no idea what due on sale means. So I explained to them that due on sale is an option but not an obligation for the lender to ask them to pay off the loan. Now, we already know that seller doesn't have the ability to pay the loan off. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the position they're in right now. And of course, they freak out over that. And so I always ask them two simple questions. What does your bank, your mortgage company really want? The answer is they want their monthly payment. Do you think they want to own the property? Absolutely not. Everybody answers those questions the same. And they get a pretty good picture of that, and it gives them some comfort zone along the way. So we explain seller liability, we explain due on sale. So I start with the positive, tell them the few things that could be negatives out there, but not really, because I'm not going to put all this money into a property for bringing a loan current, repairs, etc., and then just walk away. And if I do, that's to their benefit, because they take the house back fully renovated. So they get a great deal. And then what I like to do is I like to tell them what it is I do. Now, I know that a lot of our clients out there, they may buy a home subject to lease a property. That's fantastic. Some might buy a home subject to, in this regard, for a fix and flip, if you can find a good enough deal. Usually not. But a lot of us, when we buy a home sub to, it's our intent to resell using a wraparound mortgage, right? So I like to tell them that I'm doing these kind of things. Why? I like the fact that they realize I'm helping a buyer get into a home who kind of like them has some issues too. I explained the process we go through of processing a buying using an RMLO, how that works, why it works, just like when they bought the home, so they understand it. This buyer can actually afford the house. We're trying to help people get in. It just makes them feel a little bit better along the way that we're helping do those things. I explained to them that our buyer may very well refinance the home, that they're going to have every reason in the world to do that because of the rates we charge sometimes. And if they do, their underlying debt's paid off. I walk them through the possibility that a buyer may sell the home. People, own a home 4 to 6, 7 years on average. And so in transition, if they sell the house, the loan gets paid off as well. I also explained to them that a lot of our buyers that we work with, they don't want to pay the loan in 30 years. They want to pay it in 20 or 15. Heck, I've seen some in 5 or 10 years. But if that's the case, it's going to help to pay down their loan even faster, giving them more protection because their house value is going up as their mortgage value is going down quicker.
Does that help their credit score? If they pay, really fast, if you make more payments, does your credit score go up, or does that not really?
I don't know that exact answer. I do know that the way you pay a home mortgage is about 50% of your credit score. So of course, timely payments is beneficial, and maybe extra principal payments may be as well. I don't know exactly how the 3 major credit unions handle that though, so I can't tell you that exact answer. I probably should know that though, shouldn't I?
Yeah, that'd be good to know.
And then I also tell them, along the way, our buyer may just make their payments and it's paid off when it is. But any of those situations are better than what they're facing right now.
And I know that, and you're really good at this in all your disclosures in your closings, of going over and over and over the disclosures, because, and we just had a guy the other day call, and he wanted to buy another house, and why is my name still on my house? And we had to go back over with him a couple years later. They forget.
Of course they do. Well, sellers have short-term memories.
And they're in a desperate situation, so a lot of them are just probably not listening to half of what you say to them.
Well, I like to go back and touch my seller as often as possible. I know a lot of investors don't. I like to take that time to revisit what we're doing, what the issues are, how it works, why it works, pros and cons all along. By the way, I like to go back to the house when I'm buying one this way and put my eyes on the house again. I want to see the repairs that I may be obligated to pay again that are out there. And the more times I can do that, the better. But I just think it's making sure we're all on the same page. We all go in with our eyes open, because that's what I think makes a good sale in these situations.
Right.
And you know, Susan, if there's a realtor involved, it helps that realtor understand the process too, because they're not trained in this.
Right.
And the more we can help all parties understand it, it makes the transactions flow a lot smoother.
Right. To go back to what their options are, you know, selling retail, short sale, all those things. Another option that a lot of our sellers will say is, well, I'm just going to file bankruptcy. They don't, you know, explain why that you would, what you would tell to that seller, why that's just making their life more miserable than it.
What happens is when someone gets behind in payments, if they're facing a foreclosure, they get inundated with all of these letters from attorneys. How we can stop the foreclosure, we can file a lawsuit, we can do this. They get bankruptcy attorneys, how we can stop the foreclosure by filing bankruptcy. Of course, they're all trying to collect and make what? Legal fees, right? Are they really trying to help the seller? No, they don't understand the seller situation. They just have legal remedies that will defer the issue, more or less. If you're behind in payments and you really haven't paid the payments, you might be able to slow down a foreclosure. You're not going to stop it eventually. You're just delaying the inevitable, and you're paying somebody a lot of money.
Right.
If they go the bankruptcy route, bankruptcy is horrible on your credit. It's going to make it even much worse and harder to come out of bankruptcy. And what they don't understand is in today's bankruptcy world, once you file bankruptcy, you got to file your plan, meet the ability to be in bankruptcy, but besides having to pay your mortgage payment, so if you're already not able to pay your payment today, what's going to make you think that in 60 days you can start paying it again?
Right.
Plus, you got to pay all of the arrearages in a note over 4 to 6 years. You got to pay additional fees to your attorney. You got to pay trustee fees. And if you don't pay all this, the trustee is going to dismiss you from the case. And of course, you already have that credit ding now. And guess what? You're now further behind in your mortgage payments.
Right.
All they've done is push it down the road a little bit and delay the process.
Right.
That's not to say that bankruptcy is not a viable option, because there are times and places for everything that work that way. It's why it's there. And when used properly with someone who has the legitimate need for that and can use that to crawl out of the hole, it's good. But I see so often that the sellers are just doing this because they see that as a quick fix.
Right.
And they're not thinking, they don't understand that when they talk to us investors who understand how to do this game the right way, we have a solution that works so much better for them.
Okay. One of the things that that we also want to talk to and train the buyer is and we get this call all the time about how they want to buy a new house, and we get questions when we're talking with the buyer that, well, they don't want to keep it on their under their name because they're eventually going to want to go buy a house. So how do you talk to them about that? What's the future solution? What does that look like?
Well, think about this. You know, credit nosedives 10 times faster than it climbs back up the hill, right? And so most of the time these sellers are in a bad situation. It takes several years for them to come out of that, to be able to go out and purchase a new home.
Right.
I have found maybe 1 out of 500, 600, 700 deals where some seller actually has the ability within a very short time frame to go buy a new home. It's usually minimum 2 years, usually much longer than that in these cases. But if they are able to do it, and we've gotten these phone calls, that's great. That means we helped them out of a bad situation.
Right.
They were able to reestablish.
Yeah.
Now they're moving back on. That's great. But the way a lender is going to approach a situation where we have bought the home subject to is they're going to look at it either A, as a rental property, or B, they may just totally wipe it off. Every underwriter is going to be different. Even underwriters within the same mortgage company may be different as well. And what I mean by that is if you treat it as a rental property, the mortgage company and underwriter will take the 25% of the payment and apply that to the borrower's debt to income ratio, just like they would if the house was leased to anybody else. Or if we have done the right thing, we've made our payments on time, usually for 12 months, then they will discount that loan to zero. There's not and just basically say it doesn't even exist. It's been sold, payments are being made in autonomy by somebody else. It's no longer your responsibility, we're not going to count it. Now, how they do that, not our, we don't get a chance to control that.
This is just came to mind, and I don't know if this makes any sense or not, but if they are trying to go back and get another loan and they go back to their original lender, wouldn't that spark like, well, you know, a due on sale?
Well, think about this for a minute. Mortgage companies are rarely the final lender, right? So you go to ABC Mortgage Company and you get a loan, and the very next day that loan is transferred to Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, Flagstar, somebody else. It doesn't wind up at that mortgage company. So the same mortgage broker that closed deal 1 on deal 2, probably not. But it's going to come up in their credit report, and they're going to see it, and they'll address it the way we just described.
Just to circle back on how you're going to talk to sellers, just thinking of all the conversations we have with our sellers, is a big thing is, well, you know, they don't know us from Adam. Certainly they can look us up and see we're legit. But what
so
about...
am I Adam and you're Eve, or what?
And that's how it goes. How do you address the fact that, you know, the questions, and we get them, well, how do I know you're going to make that payment?
Well, oftentimes you don't. So we have to take the time and explain things to them in a more proper fashion. Demonstrate who we are, what we've done, those kind of items, and how we're going to do it. And it's through, you have to win their allegiance a little bit out there sometimes. There's not really a good answer. You know, today I have a reputation or a pedigree, or whatever you want to call it, because I've done so many transactions. I can show them what I've done and how I've done it to give them some...
But what about that new investor this is his first sub-2?
Well, it's a little bit harder, but it's just, again, you have to be yourself. You have to win that person's, you know, allegiance. You have to explain to them properly to them. You have to get into that comfort zone on how you're going to take care of this, not just through your own resources, but how you're handling things on the back end also, and demonstrate that in a proper technique.
And also, you know, engage them in getting signed up online to make sure the payments are made. Well, get them involved in the process.
Well, that's all about how they're protected. You're exactly right, because, you know, I want to get an online account set up that I can navigate things through, but I want that seller to know they have the same ability, and if it's not set up, they can still themselves go online or by phone, call and check on their payment status. And so I always tell sellers that at the end of the month, you know, they can don't worry about it on the 1st or the 5th or the 10th. Wait until the 25th or so. And then, you know, if it hasn't been paid, first off, check with the mortgage company. It's easy to do, either online or by phone call. They're not checking things on you. They're just going to say, hey, I just want to check the status of my payment. Has it arrived yet? And they'll tell you. Well, if it hasn't, you know, I always tell them, pick up the phone and call your buyer. There's usually a very reasonable solution, and that conversation solves 95% of all issues that come up out there. Now, could things happen where the buyer doesn't make the payment? Absolutely. I could sit here and probably give you a dozen scenarios right offhand, but normally it doesn't. Now, if the seller is being proactive, makes those phone calls, they do their checking at the end of the month, remember, it's their money too and their property, and it's not, then obviously they have the ability to start, you know, a foreclosure process if they wish to do so. But that seller has to be willing to do those kind of things to get it going. Some are, some aren't.
Okay. And that's where that deed of trust that we give them comes into play, and we walk them through that to make them really aware that they have the power to...
Yeah, it's all about, it's how they're secured and it's how they're protected on their own home that's out there. And I like to do that every time. But by the way, there are some investors out there who still just want to take a deed only and not give the seller back a deed of trust. And they just don't understand how many dangerous issues that creates, because now you're bringing in attorneys and things of this nature and lawsuits possibly if for some reason payments aren't getting made. So I know that we here at the OFN are always pushing how to do this business the right way, how to protect not just our buyers, but our sellers and ourselves and all in between. And when done right, this is a great mechanism for our sellers out there who have bad situations. And to me, it's a cure to most of their problems.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us for Ask the Attorney. If you have a subject you would like us to address, please reach out to us at theownerfinancenetwork.com, and we would be happy to do an Ask the Attorney, wouldn't we?
It'd be great. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.